Hi everyone, and welcome to the SEO Kitchen Show, the SEO webinar series where SEO cooks from around the world debate in fiery discussions to balance out the flavours of their recipes and come up with the best SEO tips for their audience. I'm your host, Sophie Brannon, and please welcome our SEO cooks for today of Episode 5, Spicy SEO and Search Intent, Lidia Infante, Myriam Jessier, Johanna Maier, and Lazarina Stoy. I will let you all introduce yourselves. Lidia, if you want to go first.
Hello. My name is Lidia. I'm the Senior SEO Manager at Sanity, a CMS and structured content platform, and I am very, very into women in SEO, doing tech, getting amazing jobs, and sharing knowledge. So this panel is a dream.
Should I go ahead?
Go ahead.
Well, hello everyone. My name is Myriam Jessier, and I'm an SEO trainer and consultant. That's what I used to do. I do it less and less because training is taking up more of my time. I am French. Many people do not know this. They think I'm Canadian, which is also true. I'm Canadian as well. And I'm really into anything that has tentacles and very spicy foods. But on top of that, just like Lydia, I really, really care about women and non-binary folks entering our industry and thriving in it.
So I'm up. Hi, my name is Johanna. I'm a SEO consultant at the International Digital Agency DEPT. I'm based in Berlin in the office here. I'm originally from Bavaria or Augsburg in Bavaria, in the south of Germany. Yeah, I'm also love everything technical about SEO as well as search intent, also the women in tech SEO community that many of us are part of. And yeah, really looking forward to the panel today.
Yay, so many women in tech SEO on this panel. I'm very happy. So I'm Lazarina. I'm the SEO and data science manager at Intrepid Digital. Our agency specializes in large-scale enterprise companies and e-commerce companies, and my role is specifically tied to data and how to use that better in client strategies. So very, very fun, and I'm very happy to be here today.
Amazing. Yes, we have an incredible panel and I'm really, really excited to see what you guys have to say all about search intent. For everyone watching, feel free to use the hashtag SEO Kitchen Show on Twitter and on LinkedIn and ask questions at any time using the question box, and we'll be sure to answer them at the end. So let's get started with the first question. What is search intent?
So the long story short of search intent, instead of writing a mega long blog post, is like the user is trying to do something, which is why they're on Google. That is search intent. You can classify it to make it simple, but that's what it is, what they're trying to accomplish when they're searching.
I love this because I had a note about this going, it's the purpose of an online search, period, the end. And I like the fact that we're saying the same thing, but just with different words, because that's part of the game too.
Yeah, definitely. What I also find interesting that maybe search intent and user intent could be two different things. If you look like at what is search intent and what do you see in the search results and what's ranks there, might not actually be what the user wants to achieve, because first there are so many users looking for the same term, could be 1,000 things, but also because maybe there's not the content out there yet to serve those intents.
I think this is very important because I used to work in a library and I quickly figured out that what people think they want isn't necessarily always what they want. So they refine things.
I was just about to say when I first started researching search intent in general, I dug into academic papers, and how it originated in search in terms of online search was based on the type of intents that people would go into when they would visit a library. And that's how the first classifications were born. You know, what are you trying to do? Are you trying to find a business? Are you trying to learn something about a topic you're interested in? Are you trying to do anything else that you would do in a library? But because we're so detached from that point of view, we try to think of it in more technical terms, but at the end of the day, like as Lydia said, you're just trying to do something, and it's the question about how you structure your query to do what you want to do.
Exactly.
Yeah, that brings us to an interesting point, right? Which is intent and search intent is what we have named. This is what the user is trying to do. And we have had the need to name this because it can be very nuanced and it can be very complex. And as marketers, we kind of feel like it should go on these little boxes and we should be able to measure it and we should be able to divide our content by intent and divide our queries, target queries by intent. Um, but I feel like the focus should be on simplifying it a little bit, taking a step back, and understanding more the human behind the number. I don't know. We've got a gazillion questions to go through. So this is
No, but I really like this because I often work with developers and startups that are very tech oriented and like, this doesn't scale. I'm like, it doesn't matter. Do you want success? Focus on people. And this always irked me because I always felt like I had to defend human beings looking for things. I'm like, but at the end of the day, it's not a machine buying your product. It's a human. Please pay attention to this. And I'm going to add something, I promise, then I will stop. But I've had success exactly where in that gray area that we are all describing. I've noticed that there are certain questions where Google will match answers to that search intent, but it's not refined enough. And as an SEO, you have the opportunity to go, I know humans better than you do. I know exactly what answer I should give. And then you see the success and you're like, yes, being human oriented works. And it feels so nice.
Yeah, totally. I think you see that so many times, especially for the kind of keywords that have a lot of search volume, that where many people looking for many different things or intend many different things with that word. I don't know, for example, a example from a client from us in the beauty industry, if you look for something like red lipstick, you see like shops listing like really products, and you see articles like those are the 20 best lipsticks around at the moment. And there you can see that Google is also not sure, is it like transactional, is it informational, what should you actually serve the users, because the user doesn't really know what they want with the term. And Google is also trying to push them, like you said, to refine that search too. Why don't you type 20 best lipsticks and just instead of lipsticks, and to kind of push them to make it more clear.
Yes, it's becoming so much more common now, isn't it? With Google trying to push people to refine their searches even more to really direct that search intent, because they're not always so sure either.
Yeah, I was just about to say, imagine someone going into a library and saying lipstick. You're like, what do you want me to do exactly?
That has
do you want
happened
to
to
try
me.
it? Do you want to buy it? Do you want a red one? Do you want a blue one? So I remember back in the day, there was a series on YouTube. It was like, what if Google was a person type of thing? And that always stuck with me, especially going into this role years later, because it's like their job is so hard. And for me, it's interesting to see how they use the data that they have and what are the different data points that they use in order to guide those searches. So are they going to break down the query? So what if the query is very short? Like Johanna said, if it's just one word, how are you going to break it down? How are you going to choose what to serve on that first page? But what if it's really long and you don't have anything to serve that user? How are you going to choose the content that you serve that's similar to that? And all of these different methods that Google uses to address maybe a little bit more complex queries are very telling based on kind of the strategies that you can build for your clients, especially when it's a little bit more challenging and not as straightforward.
You know what I find really funny as a concept? Because as SEOs, we're like, I don't know, there's this incredibly boring long form content out there that absolutely does not match anyone's search intent. And imagine you go onto a shop and go like, lipstick, I'd like some lipstick, and they reply to you with the history of lipstick, 10 iconic women who have worn red lipstick in movies, red lipstick, what is it made of, etc., etc., etc. Sounds stupid, but that's what many marketers are doing right now.
That's what many SEO audits look like too. It's really painful. And I've had humans actually walk up to me at the library counter and shout 2 words at me. And I was supposed to guess that this was like the 17th century Spanish philosopher. And they looked at me and I'm like, How am I supposed to know this? Let me breathe. Like, just give me context so I can help you. No, this person was having none of it because Google was already in their lives. So they were expecting me to behave just like Google.
Crazy, yeah. I think also because in the end, if we have like a keyword with so much search volume, we then try to figure out what content should be put on it. But maybe we could take a step back and try to more focus on the long tail keywords first if we have that opportunity, because maybe usually the search intent is a bit more clearer there and we don't even have to go into all those,
Definitely. And
assets.
that leads so nicely into the next question as well about how is search intent related to keywords and is it actually related?
Yes, can I take this one really quickly? I think this is cool. And this comes back to like why the concept of search intent, because it's completely made up. We've made it up, right? To soothe our souls and feel like we've got clarity and we know what we're doing. We're trying to infer intent from the keyword. That is how they're related. So we're looking at a set of keywords and we're thinking, this is what the person is trying to do. So best phones of 2022, they're in a research phase trying to understand what phone they want to buy next. So they're in a bit of a commercial research stage. And that's how we empathize with the user. But then we've got all of the ambiguous content, and that's much harder. Head queries, like head keywords. If I go onto Google and go CMS, like what the fuck am I trying to accomplish? Sorry, I don't know if I can swear in this.
Thank you. I feel like I am at home. This is the right panel for me. So yes, I fully agree. While you recover, I will take a risk of maybe swearing as well. This is something I do. I had made notes about this because to me, keywords are proxies that we use to express search intent. As humans, it's the way we like make sense of what we want in our heads. So search engines will use the same proxies to understand what humans are searching for to return useful results. However, and this is where it's important, there's a giant gap between what a company wants to say, what people are searching for, and what Google will show. So when I first got my dog, and I'm obsessed with my dog, like to the point that I have a dog blog just for the dog. Okay. So I got to learn a lot of things about search intent when it comes to dogs, because the first time your pet eats a grape, you look at the dog going, it rolled on the floor. Thank you for picking it up. And then panic sets in. And then you will go, okay, Google, can a dog have grapes? And you learn that no, absolutely not. They're not supposed to. So now imagine I had to do this with everything she would pick up off of the floor. Like, can my dog eat a cooked, desiccated, dried out chicken bone from KFC in the parking lot? The answer is also no. However, most companies that answer these queries, they go, no, you can't give your dog cooked bones. So I got really mad as an owner. And I wrote this gigantic, over-optimized SEO FAQ, not because I wanted to have overly optimized content, but because we needed answers. Can my dog have baby back ribs? Because, you're at the barbecue and the dog is looking at the ribs. You're looking at the dog, then looking at the ribs. Those answers that say, no, you can't give cooked bones to your dog, they're not specific enough. They don't speak to your situation. So my FAQ is super popular, despite it being an SEO mess. And it spikes around the 4th of July. Ladies, can you guess why? It's an American trick question.
Independence Day.
Yes, the biggest barbecue of the year. All the bones are there. That's why people find me.
Yeah, but it's nice. I don't know if you saw the question in the chat, but we were wondering if it's written from a blog.
Answers, Myriam.
Yeah.
Yeah,
What
this
is
isn't a panel. This isn't a search intent panel anymore. We just want to talk about the dog blog now.
I missed the question. Just a moment. Let me go check because I'm. Oh, okay. This is .dog. Yes, it was a drunken domain name purchase, but it's amazing. So now I own this is dog.
That's amazing.
Is it written from the dog's perspective?
No, it was from the human going around the world traveling with the dog. Like, does this airline accept your dog? Can you go to this hotel? What to do if your dog chews through everything you own? I have the answers.
I love it.
I like this plug. Very organic.
I don't know how it happened, but my dog started barking. I'm in with headphones, but she still somehow understood we're talking about chicken bones and eating them off the floor. It's so fascinating. I love it. But anyways, just to kind of give my 2 cents on search intent and keywords, for me, it's related only to the extent that you can actually, use it as maybe guidance in your strategy. You don't have to absolutely match everything or try to or even, let's say, think that you understand what users want and how your content absolutely aligns with that. But more so, you can get a very basic direction of the search landscape, the competitor content, your content even. And the way that I would do this is just to kind of pick in certain different categories the main descriptive keywords that I would say, if the keyword is contained in a query, then that is a very strong likelihood that that query is related to a certain type of intent. And we're talking here beyond the basic 4 or 5 categories that are informational, transactional, and so forth, but just to go beyond that and maybe try to see, is the intent of the user to find a text-based article? Is it an infographic? Is it an ultimate guide? Is it a beginner's guide? So many of these things can actually signal to you whether your user is a beginner, whether they want to do something super in-depth, whether they have maybe like 10 minutes. So sorry. Maybe they have like 10 minutes to spare to actually go through your content, or maybe they just want a quick skim through it. Maybe they just want to listen to a podcast or whatever it may be. So, and all of these things can actually guide you in terms of when you're developing the content, how you should develop it and what language should you speak. And that another very good tactic that I've seen recently is to use action-based verbs to actually see what the intent is that the user is trying to achieve, whether they're just trying to read about something, whether they're trying to learn about something, or whether they're trying to actually perform an action after they kind of get a little bit more familiar with the brand or with the content. Of course, none of this can be fully automated, but at the same time, using these keywords can be a very, very good indicator in terms of understanding what your users want and maybe where you can actually create intent as opposed to just serving it.
Definitely. And Lazarina, you were talking there about kind of videos, infographics, and how you can really use that search intent. So the next question is kind of about that. So what are some concrete ways to take search intent into account? Like, how do you really then use that as part of your strategy?
Yeah, again, since I'm already talking and my dog kind of stopped getting into the frame, I can maybe quickly answer that. I think trying to understand the different opportunities that you have in terms of creating a content strategy, in terms of what the company can do, what the business can afford, what is the budget, and things like that. So if you know that you can only control content in terms of text-based, that's great. You will kind of focus a little bit more on that. If you know that you have the budget to create a full-blown content strategy with like many different formats, why not do that and find the different niche markets and the topics where people would like to be served a different kind of content than text. And in addition to that, kind of matching the specific pages and optimizing them to kind of serve questions that are very much related to that phase where the user is. I think that's very important. So obviously, if you have a pricing page, you're not going to talk about, let's say you have a pricing page for a CDN, you're not going to talk about what a CDN is, because if the user is already there, they're most likely aware of what it is, what the history is. And like Lydia said, like, you don't need to fluff it up. You just kind of have to be to the point. And that also kind of aligns a little bit with what Google wants to do. Obviously, they want to crawl the web as quickly and efficiently as possible, not waste a lot of resources. So you serving that content in a very organized way is a very good way to actually ensure that, first of all, the web is more accessible, less crawling is needed to actually access all of that content, and that content can be actually found and served to your users as well.
I have some concrete pet peeves when it comes to like take search intent into account. So I have some clients where most of their queries, it's a video, and here they are trying to publish the ultimate guide to not showing up first. So it's very confusing. And when I say showing up first, I genuinely don't care about the notion of being number one anywhere. But if the intent is clearly show me something, then show them something. And if the intent is question and answers, so something I got to discover with the Canadian Olympic team, people genuinely care about athletes, girlfriends and boyfriends, how much they're worth and what their best scores are. Those are questions and answers. You don't need to tell me about like the entire story of this entire family that led to this athlete being born. Just tell me what I need to know, even if it's gossip. And this leads into another thing that I suffer through being in Canada, being in a bilingual country. Search intent is very, very interesting, and we need concrete ways to address it. So some words in French are only used in specific neighborhoods in Montreal because there are French people from France, and they will call that piece in the shower a certain way. But the rest of French Canadians, they don't call it the same way. So already the search intent is the same, but not expressed the same way in the same localities. And when you enter this bilingual realm, search intent is sometimes like 40 people hiding in one trench coat, aka that one keyword. So you end up with situations where you don't even know if the keyword is mainly typed by Anglophones or Francophones. You have to figure this out. Depending on the order, you have to guess, same words. And then you have to move up and figure out, okay, am I truly satisfying what people are looking for? And are you the customer I'm trying to talk to? Or are you the CEO who signs the check at the end of the day? Those things overlap sometimes, and it's very complicated because different people will use the same words expecting different results. And that's something Google struggles with as well, not just us.
Yeah. I wanted to say also, and it ties up a little bit with our previous question and a little bit with what Lazarina was saying. When we're looking at search intent and we're trying to infer it from keywords, it's not just from the word itself, but we're trying to say, we're trusting Google to know best. And we look at the SERPs to see what Google is surfacing, to understand how we can satisfy our users best. So again, is it going to be video? Is it going to be an infographic? So and so and so. Generally, lots of people consume content in many different ways. So I would grab a piece of content and just distribute it in all of the formats, because that improves the ROI of your content investment as well. But something very important is understanding what is the customer journey of your user. Because if you know that they're searching for, again, headless CMSs, you might know that their next step is going to research reviews of your CMS, another CMS, or compare your CMS versus another CMS. They might be wondering what the Jamstack is, right? If it's come up on your article. So if you already know where they're going, you can very kindly funnel them and push them down the awareness, become their main resource and their BFF when it comes to information. So that's something that's very handy, and you can integrate intent in your customer journey maps. Your intent, your keywords, your content.
I'm going to add one pet peeve to this. Once again, I just complain because that's the thing I do quite well as a French person. So in B2B, I ran into search intent blocks. If somebody's looking for a template, don't hide that template behind, like that form and just optimize the H1 for this. No. I want to know about this template. I want to be able to download it. I want to be able to use it. And maybe that's where my story ends, but I'll be talking about your product or your company to someone else who may be interested. And I think there's a clash between search intent and sometimes the way we do marketing online or want to do it. So that's also something that you have to take into account and balance out. I know it's a huge struggle in B2B.
Yeah, I feel like I can add something to everything you guys already said, because or covers the most important points perfectly. But yeah, for example, for me, taking search intent into account is one big thing is to kind of figure out what to target with a landing page or with a page that you build. Like, of course, you can't just put one keyword, one page. With the search intent, you can figure out, okay, what's a nice set of secondary keywords? What else can I put? Like, what keywords trigger the same search results? And from there, you can kind of figure out what should go on the same page. For example, yeah, in Spanish, I go back to the lipstick example, but you have like 3 words for lipsticks, like pintalabios, para de labios, and labial, I think. And so wouldn't make sense to build a landing page for each of them. So you need to figure out what are synonyms, what are keywords you could put on the same page. Then also with you can discover your project through search intent. Like if you're maybe even a SEO, you're often not an expert on the topic that you're working on. So this is also a great way to get to know the user step by step. And if it's just the language and internationalization, for example, we're here in Germany, we say Urlaub for holiday, but if you in Switzerland, they don't use that word at all. They say Ferien, which for us is school holiday, but they use it for everything. So you need to be aware of those like subtle differences. And yeah, the search intent kind of can guide you through the process of discovering all that.
And there's also brand intent. That's something that
Definitely.
that I see some of my clients, they're like, yeah, well, people find us. I mean, no. There's nuanced intents when it comes to brands. So we know in PPC, you will end up with ads because your company is so hot that hey, your keyword is already something we're Googling, so may as well. Mm-hmm. But you also have that search intent that shows up quite often, like company name plus login. Please satisfy this. Make your login page easily findable. This is not always the case.
I think something else in terms of taking search intent into account, as much as this expression is not liked by some of the panelists. Something to say is that when you understand and do an assessment of keywords and competitive landscape, anything else that you are doing in the strategy, when you do that, you can also, if you are working with a very restrictive brand voice or brand guidelines, you can also find very good ways to incorporate off-page opportunities for I'm so sorry.
I am here for this co-host.
My co-host is very interested in becoming a panelist for Oncrawl, so please, Rebecca, send her an invite, please. So yes. And so what I want to say is that sometimes brands, they don't want to satisfy certain intents on their own website. So as a consultant, it's very important to highlight those intents, that they exist, what the volume is, how you can satisfy them with building off-page strategies, with link building, with whatever content that you can produce on an authoritative website via PR or whatever else it may be. And that's also another way that you can take that into account when you're building your strategy.
Definitely. Let's talk a little bit more about that, about how we measure search intent, how you quantify it, how you identify it. Is that within the strategy? Is that just within your initial research phases? How do you do all of these things?
On my end, I stumbled onto something that is near and dear to my heart, seasonality. So you will see that search intent, actually, Halloween is a huge one. Huh? You will notice that there's more informational content throughout the year, and then when it heats up, you're noticing some product pages showing up. Those costumes, those cheap, confusing costumes are ranking way better. And same for Valentine's Day, etc. So for me, that's something that let's be clear here. Lazarina, I look forward to everything that you talk about when it comes to data. I feel ill-equipped to answer this question, but the one bit I'm confident on is just human beings have variations. Like we change all the time, and that's what I try to look into and measure. Now I'm going to pass on the baton to anyone else, because measuring and quantifying things is tricky here.
I just wanted to say that some tools are doing a really, really good job at grabbing the mixed intent or ambiguous intent keywords, and instead of just giving you, I love your co-host, Lazarina, instead of leaving you just that, like, this is commercial or this is informational, they say 40% commercial, 60% informational. And there is, I don't know if I can mention them, they're very small and super new, Keyword Insights, they do this with machine learning. So what they do is they express the intent of the keyword by looking at the types of result that Google is surfacing, right? So if it's surfacing mostly articles, then it's gonna like mark it up as informational. And I think that's really cool. But a practical tip on this is agree on the framework that you're gonna use, because there's like a gazillion frameworks for search intent, and they use different words all over. So you kind of need to speak to your stakeholders and say, we are having, if you have a local business, right, with several different locations, navigational intent or a location intent is something you need to incorporate. If you are in SaaS, you need a longer commercial informational intent funnel. And if you're working with a very traditional organization, you can straight up use the marketing funnel as your intent framework. But just agree on one. Maybe run a little workshop.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with everything Lydia and Myriam said. For me, just to kind of make it a little bit more practical, because anyone that knows me knows I want to give practical tips on how to actually classify search intent. It can be as easy as looking at SERP results at scale using a tool like Data for SEO. You can get the SERP results for up to 100 results for keywords that you put in. And having that kind of data set, you can very quickly identify the patterns. Just like Lydia said, some software companies do that already using machine learning. But if you're just starting out with search intent, and if you throw in machine learning into the mix, people are just going to stop doing anything in relation to that. So it can be just as simple as, if you think that you want your stakeholder or whatever, as part of your content strategy, you want to target mainly informational intent, you just have to understand whether Google is serving that kind of intent for that keyword. And maybe that can also help you with stakeholder management. So if you have a client that insists on creating what is content, and you can demonstrate through this kind of data set that type of content is not being served, and actually show the different keywords and queries that the content is being served, that's a very good way of actually incorporating search intent into the way that you talk to clients. And it doesn't when we talk to other SEOs and when we communicate in the industry, we often use things like informational, navigational, and things like that. But for clients, one of the most important intents and kind of the leading category that you should lead with is whether this query contains something that you also use to describe your product or you don't. And that's kind of like, if it's product related, that's automatically high intent for the brand. If it's not product related and it's something that is just super generic, then automatically that is not something that the brand will care about. Even if you say the search volume here is massive, they're going to be like, well, we don't care about that because that's not really related to us. So in my eyes, just if you're trying to measure, understand, quantify, Google Sheets is absolutely a great tool. Data Studio when you're trying to visualize, and then using just simple formulas to kind of tell a story, whether users are trying to understand more. So maybe the market is not as well defined, or whether they're trying to buy, or whether they're trying to do whatever else it may be. And my only tip is not to make it too complicated, because if you kind of hit them with the theory of what every intent means and how you have done or devised a very super complicated way to classify search intent, nobody's going to care. So keep it simple as well.
I have two little tips to add. When we talk about measuring, quantifying, and identifying search intent, sometimes it can simply mean go in Google Search Console and check out what's showing for your content. So something I discovered is the search intent behind an article I wrote and sweated and bled all over. I was excited. This was good. Readability. Nobody cared about it. Everybody wanted to know how to get the green light in Yoast SEO. That was that one sentence in my article that kept getting me traffic. fine, you get an entire section in that article. I get the search intent, I get it, Google, thank you for the feedback. So sometimes you won't uncover this right away. You may uncover it later after you launch something. And then another element that can help you that's concrete, you can go in most SEO tools and filter out, is there video showing up? Is there like these SERP elements that you can identify? And one of the reasons why I love this is that when you're a small company facing huge companies, so let's say you're a hotel facing TripAdvisor and Booking, you can see if they show up in certain tools. So you know that some queries, they're good, but some of them are great for you because the big guys are not over there trying to optimize. They don't know how search works in your locality as well as you do. So use those keywords.
Yeah, also would like to give an example adding up to what Lazarina said, because I also couldn't agree more about checking the SERPs and actually like the titles and the URLs you get back there. And with a tool like Data for SEO, or there are other APIs that actually deliver you those things on a keyword basis. And actually, we already used this technique for one of our clients in the fashion industry, because we had the issue that for like a general term like hoodies, you don't know if you get back like URLs that are mainly targeted at women or men. So some had only products for men, some only had products for women for some terms. And for hoodies, for example, there were mainly products for men showing in the search results. And this was actually quite easy to a pattern that you could detect super easily in the result pages. And by getting that data and then analyzing like the titles, if there is like phrase women or men inside, we could do the analysis and decide like for large keyword sets on scale, okay, this one we target with a landing page for women, this one with a landing page for men. And so this is, it's also a way to scale search intent analysis.
Definitely. So I'm going to skip ahead to the last question, just keeping an eye on time because we've got lots of Q&As coming in. And unfortunately, we don't have hours and hours and hours to talk about search intent, which I'm sure we all need. Do you think search intent and the way that we're using search intent as part of SEO now is a significant departure from how we looked at search behavior in the past?
Yes. I used to fight with my colleagues and my clients in my first SEO jobs. I can say it now, many years later, but I had to optimize a website, an e-commerce website, for a very famous, very arrogant designer who has now passed. And I had to tell my team, those are not keywords. Like his first name and his last name plus whatever item of clothing is not how humans look for this. And I had to fight to just include his last name because that's all anyone cared. And then he launched a secondary brand with just his last name because he finally got it. And they were not understanding. It didn't matter how much I was showing them the results in Google, like asking fashionistas, wasn't going through. The other thing I was forced to do is write content for badly spelled words because this would satisfy what people were searching for. So a singular shoe, but the color red was in like plural in French. This is not what my diploma was about. I felt like I wasted my education. Today, I don't have to do this anymore. This feels so nice.
I think maybe that means because we've switched KPIs. The more that SEO has become integrated within the marketing team, and the more that we get a seat at the table, right, with senior leadership, we stop thinking of rankings for individual keywords. We stop thinking of just getting traffic, or links. And instead, we start thinking about the ultimate goal, which is going to be awareness, and it's going to be revenue. Depending on the vertical that you're in, it can be leads, right? And we start talking that language. And once we start talking that language, it doesn't make sense to misspell red shoes, right?
Yes. Thank you.
I think also trusting here that Google has actually made a significant departure from how they look at search intent. And, the misspelling algorithm update. I wouldn't even call it an algorithm update, but just the fact that Google automatically surfaces the correct content. And, if you look into machine learning, you know how easy it is to actually fix spelling mistakes and, understand what the user means when they misspell something. So that is like looking backward when you're trying to do SEO, which is not what we need to do if we want to be successful. And another thing I think is quite important is just knowing that brands think differently now when it comes to you're not only talking about keywords, you're trying to build topical authority, you're trying to and with topical authority comes the notion of that you need to talk about different aspects of a certain thing, and that could mean different stages of the user journey, that could mean comparing yourself with another brand, that could mean a number of different things. So with that said, you really do need to kind of map all of that different stages with the intent, but it's also very different from just using certain keywords and slapping them on a page and just publishing.
And it's something important to me to be able to tell the people I work with, hey, do you see this? There's not a single brand showing up for a product page here. This is like comparison land. We need a third party to talk about your brand. You're not qualified to say that you're the best kids bike ever. That doesn't work. So the format has changed as well. And what I'm blown away by, because let's be clear, I started in content, and back then, duplicate content was fine. I moved into technical SEO and came back to content. But technical SEO is also a huge part. If Google is not able to figure out what the intent of the page is it a transactional page or not? This is also something that could impede you satisfying search intent. That is something that has evolved. Before that, we all had the really intense guides, or the pages. I don't know if you remember the ones where you read a little bit of the story, you have to click, and then there's another little bit and 50 ads, and then a third one. Like, that's internet archaeology. These things don't exist anymore because there's no money to be made. Well, they still do, but they're not pushed as much because SEO is not bringing in that much traffic and money anymore.
Oh, those are a trick of the publishing industry to increase impressions on ads.
I know they are, but I had a lovely team who had a mom blog for like 15 years, and EAT became an issue. You don't have the expertise anymore. I mean, your story is just all over. It's not concrete, doesn't make sense. And now you see that once again ties to the search intent, what we're expecting out of a page as well when we get on there. So I thought that bit was just very interesting. If you've been in SEO for a while, or if you're just entering, this is a significant departure for me.
Yeah, maybe one last thing that might also fit to this last topic is that Lazarina already said it. Google also changed the way that they serve search results and what the search intent is for them. And you could also include like all the SERP integrations that you see when you look for something into that idea that search intent could be a knowledge panel, or if you have somewhere an entity hidden in your keyword and in your search term, that the search results will change completely because you get so many integrations included in the search results. And this also, for users, of course, it's nice because you get answers more easily, but maybe this could also be something that we prioritize. Okay, if we see this page is filled with all those SERP integrations, maybe it's harder to get like a click through to your page from this keyword.
Definitely. Well, thank you, ladies, for your time. Time does fly, and unfortunately, it's the end of the discussion, which I'm devastated about. I could talk about this for hours. Hopefully, it's opened the door to more questions in the chat, though. So we've got about 10 minutes, just under 10 minutes now to discuss. So don't hesitate for everyone listening to ask your questions in the chat, and we'll get started with the Q&A. So the first question we've got is from Madison. She says, we'd love to hear your take on personas. How do you layer in persona segmentation when it isn't evident in keywords or user journeys through the site?
I have a concrete example. I don't know if I can extrapolate a way to proceed, but I had a really nasty surprise quite a few years ago when I was helping someone with a what is it called? Sleep apnea situation. So this company was selling sleep apnea things. Personas are, it's mainly males. So, you know, men who are between 30 and until the end of days, they tend to snore. It's really disruptive. So I'm optimizing everything male-oriented, answering questions. Turns out that it's actually very often ladies who sleep next to someone with sleep apnea who are like, I can't take this. You sound like you're dying. I have to find you some help. So layering on that persona was a brutal situation for me, because I had to realize that my strategy, the way the person explained it to me and that oriented the entire search, we were wrong. She was like, oh yeah, it makes sense. I should have told you about this. Great. So one of the things that you have to take into account, like that, persona segmentation is going to be key, but it's not always evident. You will hit or miss some things. That's what I'm here to say. I'm the one who messes up.
I would just to kind of try to address it more from a data standpoint. If you know the certain queries that the site is ranking for, and if you kind of drill down based on a certain page, you'll be able to pair that data with Google Analytics data, where you have a little bit more insight for the specific users landing on that page, what are their demographics, kind of interests, whatever other data you can get from Google Analytics, and then pairing that with a third-party source, like for instance, SparkToro or Google Trends, you're able to kind of build a picture for that persona. But just to Myriam's point here, I do want to highlight that when you're working in a more complex market or something that you as a consultant don't have any experience with, it's always very good to kind of pivot back to first-party data that the company has about their personas, if they do have it. A lot of companies don't, unfortunately, because that would be very useful for us SEOs to have. But if they do have it, and that could be something that you do an analysis on, maybe form responses that are collected, or maybe user reviews. On those kind of platforms, you can see what the users are in terms of their job role, maybe like the teams that they're part of or they manage, or whatever else it may be. I'm kind of talking in a little bit more B2B oriented terms here, but I find that specifically with personas, that's the biggest kind of challenge. But yeah, the kind of pivoting the data from different platforms could be something that would be helpful here.
Perfect. So moving on to the next question then from Tomek. Can you predict keyword intent changes? So for example, people who search for iPhone 14 now are looking for info about the release. But once it's released, people's intent will be to buy or research it. So how do you approach this?
So the example that Tomek has provided is a little bit of a tentpole event, right? So we know it's going to happen every X amount of time. So all we need to do is go back in time and think about the iPhone 13, right? What was searched about the iPhone 13 before it was released? What was searched when it was released? What was searched after? And what was searched when we start thinking, oh, iPhone 14 is coming, right? So it's as easy as just going in and going back in time with your favorite keyword research tool and try to understand what was done before to reproduce what's going to happen now. So just, I think it doesn't scale, and I wouldn't know how to automate it. I'm sure Lazarina would, but just use some empathy and be a little clever while you're going back in time on those 10 polls.
I was trying to answer the same thing, but couldn't find the submit button in the little chat. But yeah, to me, it means look into what's been done before. You know, it's recurring. You know that there's some things that are going to happen. Just handle these queries all the time. It goes, e-commerce is the same. Black Friday, we can predict, we can tell. Algorithms, like for ads, once again, they can tell, they raise the prices, etc. So we are able to analyze some of this rather easily. Some of this we need to do by hand. Too bad, so sad, that's our job. And some of it we simply can't. We cannot necessarily predict keyword intent changes, like the pandemic. Wow, there's a lot of searches that were not expected, a lot of symptoms that people were Googling before we knew there was a pandemic on deck. So some of these events, you just know you have to roll with the flow, and you are just entering like that first learning curve, and you adapt.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more on this. But also, if you are in a space where you know that you will have recurring events over and over, like with iPhones being released every now and then also make sure to, when you go through all the cycle for the first time, that you note down all the search volume data that you have, like also on the different months, that you kind of have an historic data set to look into the future or to look into the past when you or when you go to the next iteration of this event.
Amazing. Yeah, definitely. So the next question in the Q&A. So I'm going to take a bit of a punt on this one because I'm not 100% sure what Julian's referring to, but he says, how would you quantify the number of searches made on some queries that are not getting relevant data? And by relevant data, I'm going to assume we're talking about search volumes from the Google tools and the biggest SEO tools on the market. So in order to take the right decision of the queries to target. So how would you quantify that?
There was an amazing Brighton talk about zero volume search keywords. I highly recommend we look into this, but I'm just going to say something. Sometimes you can't quantify the stuff, so you go and talk to the people who can qualify it for you. So for example, for some high ticket items, I will always ask to talk to the sales team or anyone in that capacity to know, hey, what really helps the sale? Like, what is going on? What are the keywords we should be showing up for, even though the machine is not telling me?
Yes, always talk to sales and support. People talk to sales, don't forget support, right? These people are actually knowing the pain points of your customers with your clients. And the marketing funnel doesn't end at the sale. SEO has a huge role in retention. So absolutely.
And the way I do it is ask if the support team is swamped, you just ask them this way. You go, can you list, please, the top 5 to 10 most irritating questions you're tired of answering? Okay, we will be creating content to help these people not call you as often. So usually that's how you onboard them. And then the other thing I will very often ask for support is, can I read some transcripts, or like, can I listen to some calls? Because this usually really clarifies things for me. And if for some reason you can't do that, please go to a webinar from the competition, sign up for their free demo, just go through their funnel and figure it out.
Or if for some reason you can't do that, just get the transcript and do sentiment analysis and entity extraction. You can absolutely do this without having a single line of code. So just to kind of point people to resources, Google's NLP API is available in Google Sheets. You just have to kind of copy paste the app script. And if you have the data, like if the sales team can provide that data for you, you can very quickly identify the different pain points. And of course, that's going to be kind of the first way where you prioritize keywords that maybe don't have volume in search, but they are important to the people that are using the product. And then just in terms of search volume, and because I'm kind of in the B2B space a lot more at the moment, I know the pain of trying to persuade clients that search volume is not a metric to live and breathe and hail. It's just not, because like a lot of the searches that Google sees are being done for the first time. That's one part of it. Another part of it is that even if you try to do a search volume assessment of a benchmark of a certain number of keywords, you might not spell them properly, so the tool might not return the correct data. And unless you're extremely skilled at actually clustering your keywords to find the appropriate true search volume or true demand, or have a very high budget to actually get that demand for you, you're very much going to miss the ballpark with your analysis. And then what you're missing out on is being able to establish authority for those keywords, being able to be on position 1 in a very low competition space, right? And being able to be the source of truth for the people that are searching for that. And most of the time they are very niche intent users, so they are going to be most likely persuaded by what you have to say, because you are there in that space answering their very, very niche query. So I would always kind of lead into, is this important? Who is taking that space for those keywords? So start with the SERP as well, and actually trying to persuade the client to actually go with those keywords and establish their authority there. Just because if you don't do it today, someone might do it tomorrow, right? So yeah, that's my 2 cents on this.
Amazing. Yeah, you ladies blow my mind. It's been brilliant. So thank you everyone for your time and for joining this show. We hope you enjoyed the recipes we cooked up just as much as we did. I want to say another big thank you on behalf of the whole Oncrawl team to all of the speakers involved today. The recording of the webinar will be sent to you in a few days, so keep an eye out. Up next is our last episode of the day, Algorithm Updates Layer Cake, with Cindy, Chris, Corey, and hosted by Thomas. So make sure you check it out. Thank you ladies so much again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Merci
Everybody.
beaucoup.
Bye.